Hellions number 10 follows up on Arcade and Mastermind, imprisoning Mister Sinister and his Hellions for their own nefarious purposes, filling us in on the relative details of their scheme and the impact it's having on Krakoa's sinister Suicide Squad. Today I'll answer, what does Arcade want with Mister Sinister? How the Clone Wars are heating up in the world of X-Men, why it doesn't feel like we were ready for the reign of X, theories and predictions for things to come in Hickman's X-Men and the reign of X and the X-Men universe of Marvel Comics moving forward. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. You are listening to Krakin Krakoa number 163, a review of Hellions number 10. If you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting to help me out. You can find full X-Men and comic book reading orders on comicbookherald.com. Spoilers for discussed comics will follow. Writer Zeb Wells, artist Steven Segovia, colors David Curiel, letters Ariana Maher. Arcade explains his master plan to Mister Sinister, and he has kidnapped Sinister to fill his Murderworld with clones. Historically, Arcade's Murderworlds, elaborate assassin games for his own amusement, have been driven by technology and lots of robots, although it would seem here he is ready to move on to clones. Arcade has Lady Mastermind Martinique, who actually I've probably already confused matters by calling her that. Let's just call her Martinique. Captured, okay? This is one of Mastermind's daughters. We're going to get there. If Mastermind double crosses him, he being Arcade, has her set up for a most Arcade style murder, okay? Still, Arcade does not trust Mastermind, nor should he. Leads to some hilarious repetition of confirmed every time Arcade takes an action so that an external source can confirm for him what's really happening, okay? Arcade is dubious of using someone, the master of illusion like Mastermind, that he can trust even what he is seeing in front of him, so of course he has that external source to make it a possibility. Who is Martinique Wingard? Well, it's one of Mastermind's 3 daughters, okay, 2 of whom have basically the same power set and have gone by either Mastermind or Lady Mastermind, with Lady Mastermind famously taking an interesting role in the Mike Carey written X-Men. This is not that woman, okay, that we are looking at here, Martinique. Now, this character debuts actually in kind of a Marvel oddity. It's the Wolverine and Gambit Victims 4-issue 1995 mini from Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, the creative force behind Batman The Long Halloween and Dark Victory, believe it or not. Now, initially, Martinique and Arcade work together, setting up Wolverine and Gambit, but by the end, Arcade is playing everyone, and when Martinique finds out, she traps him in an illusion of torment, at least for a time, okay? So she has the powers, effectively, of her father, in addition to a bit of telepathy. Now, she doesn't play a major role here in this issue, other than we know she's a mutant, she's the daughter of Jason Wingard, and apparently good old Jason, sleazy as he has been throughout X-Men history, cares enough about this daughter to not want to see her murderized by Arcade, and is willing to go along and double-cross Sinister. Probably didn't take a lot of coaxing there to get to that point. The other thing that we should note up front, Arcade wants a bunch of clones. We are talking clones here on a weekly basis. I talked about this in my review of Cable number 8, but there's a real clone problem in the world of X-Men right now, and Arcade entering the fray is not helping matters. We had Cable and Strife, with Strife making copies and copies of Cable going on, okay? In the pages of New Mutants, we have Gabby talking a lot about could she be resurrected as a clone of Laura Kinney, or clone from her DNA. In the pages of Excalibur, we have an official TM Mister Sinister clone of Betsy Braddock that he made for his brother Jamie, seemingly running around. We have Madeline Pryor already in the pages of Hellions, and we talked about that a bunch in the series' first arc. And then, of course, we have like Xeno and their genetic modifications to mutant kind, okay? The Clone Wars are heating up here in the X-Men universe. Now, Mister Sinister doesn't really express any resistance to building Arcade his army of clones. It is, after all, kind of his thing. But Arcade still wants to enjoy torturing him and bringing him into compliance with the world's worst trip to the dentist. I do find it interesting, honestly, how effectively Arcade has Sinister under his thumb. You know, we kind of forget it because we haven't really seen it in Hellions or really anywhere, maybe Empire X-Men at all, but like Sinister has massive powers, okay? He is not without the ability to defend himself, and yet we so rarely have seen him displaying much of any of that, okay? I think we could be in for Sinister Sinister actually stepping up and taking things out on his own, although actually the way this issue progressed, maybe he still won't need to, okay, in order to escape from Arcade and his torturous manifestations. I have to give credit here, too, to writer Zeb Wells. Like, the absurd dark comedy of Arcade, Wells really leans into it, and very effectively. Like, this is a character that I don't have a ton of affinity for, necessarily. Their gimmick of Murderworld is obviously, like, something that is just kind of well-known, and it can feel kind of one-note, with series like an Avengers Arena trying to Hunger Gamesify the character of Arcade. But Wells just says, yeah, this guy's a lunatic, right? He's a murderous Marvel villain. Let's play with that. Let's have like corporate employee memos going out about what it's like to own and operate Murderworld, and it fits right into the very dark black comedy of Hellions. It's just a good fit for this series, which again remains one of my absolute favorites, although not my absolute favorite in the Reign of X. Now, while Arcade tortures Mister Sinister, each member of the Hellions gets a mastermind torture room, okay? So basically, Arcade can cut down on costs here. He doesn't actually have to build the Murderworld, although probably he just wants to. But he puts each of these characters in a room. They have maybe a little robot dummy to keep them occupied, but really it's all like mastermind-based illusion. And each of their illusions, each of their settings, first they kind of House of M them, okay? They give them what they want, right? So Psylocke gets compassion, Graycrow, absolution, Manuel de la Rocha, satisfaction, Wild Child, aggression, where he's seen like, oh, he gets to be the top dog in a battle between Sabretooth and Wolverine. You have Nanny and Orphan Maker, they get protection of each other, of just children in general, in Nanny's case. In Havoc, he gets passion with good old Madeline Pryor returning in his illusion. Now, Psylocke, by the end of this, sees through the illusion, at least after a fashion, and sends out a telepathic blast for help, in particular to John Graycrow. We've really seen Psylocke and Graycrow's relationship expand as Hellions has. It's a very interesting one. These characters who have, Psylocke certainly has a lot of character development to work through that has been worked through in the series, having her body taken over by Betsy Braddock for so long, having her, her own sort of ninja-like assassin persona used for lots of violence. Graycrow obviously has a lot to atone for as well, and seeing these two come together and kind of have a sort of budding found romance or budding found family even, it's very, very interesting. Okay, now by the end of this, like the characters, they're still trapped in their illusions, but they're breaking free. Mastermind is given basically a kill order to put them into various nightmares, all of which are very scary, with the exception of Havoc's, which seems to continue the passion play, but just with Madeline and her Goblin Queen BDSM role. I'm not sure Alex is actually that opposed to that, but we'd have to ask him. Now, big picture, one thing Hellions number 10 got me thinking about, I honestly think the X Office jumped the gun, progressing from the Dawn of X to the Reign of X. Like, this is not a line actually moving at that rapid a clip, Like, does it feel like Krakoa is established and out here reigning over the globe, or does it still feel like they're just figuring things out, and like these weird pop-up, like Arcade can capture a bunch of mutants and threaten to clone a bunch of them and create all these new problems for the nation, like Sword, the series by Al Ewing, Valeria Sheedian team, that feels like the only real progression into the era of Reign of X, if you ask me, which I think is a big part of why it feels so special compared to the rest of the line. Sword is, in fact, my absolute favorite comic of the Reign of X so far. Now, I'm sure we'll get there. The Hellfire Gala and the announcement of the X team is clearly going to be a big deal. There's still so much to establish regarding the presence of Arakko and all those millions of new mutants, too, and like, obviously that's coming. And honestly, we still haven't really seen what Sword is about, considering they've been waylaid by the King in Black event for 75% of the series opening. But looking at it, the marketing of Reign of X feels like it clearly outpaced the reality. It feels more like an attempt to maintain the illusion of progress that isn't really present. And if you ask me, isn't really necessary. I don't need to rush through the Krakoa era. I suppose this might sound hypocritical given like recent critiques of Hickman's X-Men number 18 and the Vault storyline, but honestly, my issue is less about getting to the end of the story faster than it is focus on what's going to help us get there, okay? Than it is on essential plot details that have meaning connecting back to House of X and Powers of 10. I don't actually want to see the Krakoa era come to an inevitable end, even though I'll be the first to acknowledge all good things should have endings, and I know it needs one. And in jumping from Dawn to Reign, it feels like a shift that should be more momentous than what we've actually seen. I'm curious with like what you think as fans, as readers, as listeners to myself, as readers of these comics. Do you think that it was time for the Reign of X, or did Marvel actually pull the trigger on that too early? And that really, I know it's semantics in a sense, but like I feel like these eras should mean a little more. I know what Reign of X is supposed to mean, right? It's supposed to mean about expansion and X-Men kind of conquering the globe in the spaceways. I've talked about it a bunch, and I've done theories about it a bunch. I just feel like they actually weren't really ready to set into that scene until maybe like this summer. And they jumped the gun. But let me know what you think about all that in the comments here on the video. Back to Hellions, issue number 11. It will be the Krakoan Escape or Die. Obviously, the Hellions here have to escape Arcade's clutches. We see here in the cover of issue number 11, Psylocke is, being held down by Betsy Braddock in her body. Now, this is the Betsy Braddock of the when Mojo and Spiral had given her new eyes, drawn very effectively throughout this issue and on the cover here by Steven Segovia, with that like Mojo-verse eyewear it being especially effective and creepy. But again, this book remains great. There's good comedy throughout. It's that blend of like dark, absurd comedy and then also just straight up being dark. Hellions is very, very good. It knows exactly what it is, right? Zeb Wells, whether it was with Steven Segovia, Carmen Carnero, whoever on art, like this book knows exactly what it is. It's confident, it's effective, and it's pretty streamlined in the sense that like it doesn't quite have the meandering waves of like Marauders, pun intended a little bit. A book I like, but that feels like it kind of gets lost at times. Hellions always feels like it knows where it's going. And right now, it was my favorite X-Men book of 2020. I would say right now I like Sword more. I think Al Ewing just has a lot more to chew on there than Hellions. But otherwise, I would say it's my second favorite X book so far. But obviously, we're early in the year. It's only March here that I'm recording this. A lot can change. But let me know what you think about this comic, about where we're going in the Reign of X. Leave a comment here on the video. All is greatly appreciated. I'm happy to see the conversation. I'm Dave. You can support Comic Book Herald over at patreon.com/Comic Book Herald. You can support for as little as $1 a month, although support at the mysterious benefactors tier level will get your name added here on the videos. If you join the Patreon, you will get exclusive all of these Krakin Krakoa episodes as podcast reviews. Okay, it's the only place I release them. It'll be on the Patreon exclusive podcast feed there. Otherwise, you can find my work at comicbookherald.com, at Comic Book Herald on social. Look for the best comics ever in my marvelous year podcast for more from me. Thanks everybody for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.